Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we have a special Leo season Q&A session. We're going to be spending, I don't know, an hour and some change with you here today, answering your astrology questions, maybe looking over some of the upcoming transits for the next week or so. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon as I'm recording this. We are building up to a Aquarius full moon tomorrow. We're in the midst of a Mars-Saturn opposition, so if you have any questions or stories about all that, put it in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. If you have a question, just put question in front of your comment, and that lets me know that it's something I'm supposed to answer. So I'm going to have a few announcements before we kind of dive into it today. I welcome a few friends here today. My good friend Rachel Fletcher is always on top of it. How you doing, Rachel? Says hello from Roanoke, Virginia. So excited about the webinar tomorrow, the one I've been waiting for. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, we have the last in our Dignity and Devotion webinar series tomorrow with Saturn. So I'll talk about that in a second, but I am excited too. It's been a real journey, and it's our final installment in the 7 Traditional Planet series, and what a ride it's been. So looking forward to seeing you there, Rachel, and hope other people will join you. We have I have a link pinned in the chat to that, so sign up if you aren't signed up already. Okay, couple announcements, friends. Couple announcements. So of course today we're doing a Leo season Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Love to talk astrology with you. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I have all sorts of different offerings, including classes that Rachel was pointing out there. But I do readings too. If you're wanting some guidance into your life and navigating some of these challenging times, and you want some advice through the lens of a natal chart, through the tarot, through the fixed stars, through the decans, I'd be happy to work with you and help you out with those things. I know that it's been a lot going on in the collective right now. I'm even starting to, well, I don't know about starting to. I've been feeling these challenges for a long time, but I've been trying to stay as centered and as at peace in my own heart as I can. But man, there's some things going on, friends. So hopefully, if we work together, we can figure out some solutions together. We can put our heads together, tell some stories, and maybe unpack some solutions that we might not have thought of if we had only come at it from an individual perspective. So go check me out over on spencermichaud.com and click the Book Now button to book a session or to sign up for a class. I also have a sale going on right now, kind of an ongoing little sale. 20% off all the digital recordings that I offer at my store at spencermichaud.com. I've got a Decan webinar series. I've got the Dignity and Devotion 7 Traditional Planet series, a stars and card talk that I did about astrology and tarot. There's all sorts of information jam-packed into those webinars. It's an excellent, excellent way to support the channel and to learn things and have a sort of, I consider these legacy recordings. So if you want just a whole bunch of learning material to work through, check it out at the store, spencermichaud.com. 20% off, use the code SAGMOONMAGIC. That's kind of a callback to my beautiful daughter's new magical TikTok that she's been working real hard on. So celebrating all the people that are stopping by here and just celebrating her through education. Speaking of the webinar, tomorrow, as I'm recording this, Saturday, August the 9th, my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews and I are going to be doing the last in our Dignity and Devotion planetary webinar series. We have gone through over the last year the 7 traditional planets in ascending Chaldean order, and we've got the final planet here with Saturn. And we've been talking about mythology. We've been talking about how the planets function in the different signs, dignities, debilities, remediation. If you have a challenging planet in a challenging place, how do we fix that? How do we live with it? How do we accept it? All of those things. What are some of the strengths of that? What are some of the disadvantages? Tanya does a great job in these as well. She's talking about how to craft a ritual practice with the planet, how to set up an altar space, how to do an election, to do a magical election, if that is something that is interesting to you. All ways of remediating planets through those magical works. So I hope that you'll join us for that. We're going to be probably hanging out 3.5, 4 hours. It's a workshop, a long, lengthy afternoon, but there are many breaks in between. And we have some really nice discussions throughout with the community that joins us as well. So I hope that you'll join us for that. You can click on the Book Now button at spencermichaud.com. Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, my beautiful partner Tanya Andrews has this wonderful magically elected materia store on Etsy called Third Coast Mojo. Here you see the Iron Teeth, the exalted Mars material. This is one that we've infused some little chips. These are beaver chips. So there are chips, wood chips. Okay, so I know sometimes chips can mean something else, but these were shavings from a beaver that had returned to our watershed in the botanical gardens that we visit, which is a large property that we are members of, that's adjacent to the University of Michigan. And the beavers have returned to this Fleming, I think it's the Fleming watershed, for the first time in 150 years. And it's just really an incredible feat of nature's return to prominence and the restoration of an ecosystem. And this is a Mars and Capricorn election that tries to utilize all of that energy and help you like bite through anything that might be getting in the way and overcome obstacles. Really great stuff for a Mars in Libra period where Mars might not be at its best. If you want to overcome and remediate some of the challenges you might be feeling with Mars right now, this is an excellent material to work with. So go support her over at Third Coast Mojo. You can also sign up for my newsletter where you get a 10% discount off of everything that I offer. That's a great way to stay up to date with the channels, up to date with all the things that we do here, all of our webinars, all of our live streams, all of our classes, etc. We've got some new stuff coming in the fall, so hopefully you'll sign up for that so you know when things are going live. And then finally, if you want to support the channel, you can purchase a super chat today here on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com. We try to keep these live streams as much free of paywalls as we possibly can. I know there might be a few ads here and there, but this is an excellent way to support the channel, to exercise the spirit of reciprocity, to sort of practice that gift economy. I'm trying to research new ways of exchange and meaningful exchange. And a lot of the work that I do, there's a lot of costs that go into doing this. There's a lot of subscription to software and to reading material and all the things that go into producing basically like a television show each week. So if you want to support me and viewers like me, right, like sort of like the PBS like call to action, yeah, folks like us need help right now, because I think that the way that society is going is that we're stripping funding for things like this. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily public broadcasting, but practicing a different economic model sometimes can be difficult, and your support is always very much appreciated. All right, friends. So that's what I've got. Sorry for all the lengthy announcements, but that's what we've got to do. You know, this is kind of the way it is sometimes on these channels. But yeah, if you are just stopping in, please let me know here in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. If you've got a question about what's going on in the sky right now, about astrological technique, about a natal placement that you may have, all of those things are on the table today. Choco is here. Choco says, I found this account through your daughter on TikTok and I've learned so much. Oh, that is awesome. Appreciate you being here. I hope I'm Choco. Is that how I'm saying it? Choco? Just let me know how I pronounce it. I always want to pronounce your name properly in the chat there. But I'm so glad that you're here and that you're joining us from TikTok. My daughter's been working real hard, doing kind of experimenting with her own channel like this, where she's kind of doing it more from a magical and tarot perspective. She incorporates some astrology into her work, but she is really doing some really excellent spell work, and she has these beautifully crafted altar spaces that she's been doing and making some really informative videos and some humorous ones too. She has a real good sense of humor. So thank you for joining us today, friend, and welcome to all of you who are joining over there from TikTok. All right, my friends. So let's see. Let's bring the chart up. Let's just take a look and get an idea of what's going on in the sky right now. Maybe that will inspire some questions. So we have today we have this Mars opposition going on. right here to Saturn. And pretty interesting. We are dealing with the two malefic planets, Mars and Saturn. And I'm going to make this a little smaller. I know that there's been a little bit of hullabaloo about the size of the screen and how difficult it is to read, but some of those are the challenges that we have. This is as big as I can make it at this point without sacrificing FaceTime for the algorithm. But this is an aspect where, we're dealing with Mars in its exile. We're dealing with Saturn in its fall, but they are exchanging resources. They're exchanging both domicile, where Saturn is in the domicile of Mars, and Mars is in the exaltation of Saturn. So they have somewhat of a vested interest in each other's success, which I think is really interesting. So even though there might be some challenges today and leading into this weekend, they might lead to a more productive type of malefic opposition than you would normally see in the sky with this type of condition. So pretty interesting the way that that's playing out. Our friend Javiera is stopping in. Hello, Javiera. Nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. I hope you're having a lovely day too, Javiera. Rachel says, Mars is going over my IC this weekend, which it was doing during our last reading. Having a lot of revelations about that time that are honestly spine-tingling. A good reminder that I need another reading with you this fall. Well, you're more than welcome, Rachel. Yeah, it's funny how these things all come full circle, and how astrology and all this is so cyclical, right? I think that it's an amazing practice to be able to go back and to look at some of the aspects that we experienced in the past and see when they come back around to be dealt with in our present time. And with this sort of challenge that we're going through with Mars opposite Saturn today, Mars has moved into a decan of Libra that is associated with a recognition of inequality, of things that are unfair. There is a spirit in that decan called the Uranies, which are these horrific monsters that people would pray to if someone had gotten away with a crime, right? If they had gotten away with a crime that had gone unpunished, which happened quite a bit in ancient times and continues to happen today. If you've been following along with the news and the collective, there's all sorts of horrific things that people are getting away with right now. And it's very frustrating. I will say this week has led to I've had a little bit of a challenging emotional time this week. The kind of the hits keep coming with the things that I value and believe in, and some of those things include a healthy climate for everyone on the planet to enjoy, fairness in free and fair elections, the ability to take care of people no matter what citizen or country they are from. There's a lot of things in the collective right now that are making that very, very difficult, in seeing the removal of rights, the removal of protections on our beautiful planet, the greed, the Wendigo mindset that is permeating leadership not only in America but around the world right now. And it's very sad and it's very frustrating. And I will say, friends, I don't have all the answers today. I wish I did. I'm starting to feel a little down about it, to be 100% honest. Not that I haven't been feeling down about it, but I try to make an effort to be centered, to be as clear thinking as I can around it, and to stay hopeful. But man, it's really being tested this week with this Mars-Saturn opposition. Now, that being said, I've got a lot of books that I want to read about thinking about alternate ways of working in the world. I think I showed my book stack a little bit last week. Just to review, I've gotten a number of books about different economic models. The Gift by Lewis Hyde, How the Creative Spirit Transforms the World. And that talks about valuing art and valuing the artist. Indigenous Economics, Ronald L. Trosper, a way of looking at the world that maybe isn't as extractive and more reciprocal and more in alignment with nature. Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein, who seems to be a really profound thinker. And then another book by him called The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, which talks about valuing space, valuing the times of reduction as well as times of growth. Really important. And this is another important one that I picked up this week. It's called Cradle to Cradle. It's a classic, I'm told. And it's kind of neat because it has a little Venus sign baked into it. But it talks about making things in a way that is the opposite of the way many corporations make things now, which is under the guise of planned obsolescence, which meaning they're making it to wear out quickly, but making things that are able to last a lifetime and those materials are able to be returned to the earth and aren't going to leave a legacy uh, of waste beyond. So this is my project. This is my kind of exploration to try to work through some of these social challenges that we've been seeing. And I think that when we experience frustration like we do with a Mars-Saturn opposition, or we see injustice or unfairness in the world, it's okay to feel those feelings at first and to feel a little bit of demoralization, anger, sadness, grief. But then also, how do we try to find solutions? And sometimes the problems are much bigger than any individual. And in this case, I think that that is true. That doesn't mean that we can't take individual actions to try to be the change that we want to see. We definitely need a solution on a systemic level. And but I think just continuing to talk about these things and maybe have a different narrative than the one that we may see all the time on the internet, which is really awash in hustle culture, trying to do more, trying to flood the algorithms so that you can be visible, trying to make short, bite-sized things all the time rather than getting into depth with length and spending time with people. Maybe what we're trying to do here is the opposite of that. And it's sometimes there's doubt that creeps in when you're trying to go a little bit, I guess, counterculture. But what I have found is that this community is really supportive and full of really great and intelligent and heart-centered people. And I think that if we come from that perspective, I think we're going to be able to put our hearts and our heads together to figure out how to move forward, even in sometimes very challenging circumstances. Oh, and there's my friend Corey. Right? Corey shows up when I'm talking about the environment. Corey says, joining from my new post as greenhouse manager in Iowa. Hope everything is well. Hello again, Spencer. Nice to see you, Corey. That's amazing. Congratulations on being the greenhouse manager over in Iowa, my friend. I love to hear when people are doing things that are in connection with the earth, in connection with trying to take care of and steward this beautiful planet that we live on. So we're talking about that today. I just gave a little book list on some of the things that I'm looking at. Let me go back here and see. We've got Javier stopping in. Welcome. Roki is here. Hello, new to this channel. Hello, Roki. Roki Mountain High. Mountain High? Rocky. Okay, I get it now. Sorry, it took me. Forgive me. Forgive me for your beautiful little Rocky Mountain High. Okay, nice to see you. Sorry, it took me a minute. Oh, yes, John Denver, right? Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Welcome to the channel, friend. Hope everything's going well your way. Aquarius Galactic Federation is here. It says Mercury, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, all retrograde until they all go direct October, November, December. Love and light, everyone. Yeah, we've got a lot of backward looking right now, inner looking. Slow and steady wins the race with retrograde planets. And we may be feeling a little bit stuck too. So I think that all of the divination that I've been doing around August has talked a lot about waiting patiently, but also doing research while you wait. The I Ching talks a lot about waiting in a way that is not necessarily through waiting through fear. How do we wait through preparation? Even if the time isn't right to move forward when we have all these retrograde planets, that doesn't mean we can't be preparing ourselves for the right opportune Kairos moment. Kairos being the little cherub that had a lock of hair on his forehead that you could only catch from the front right? At the right opportune moment. It was a representation of the when the boundaries have lifted, when the clouds have lifted and it's ready to go. We can prepare for that moment so that when that moment comes, we're able to grab it. Javier says, I'm feeling that, a divide before retraction and expansion. Yeah. We worship expansion in Western civilization, and we've worshipped it to the point where it is starting to become toxic. And starting is very generous. It's been toxic for a long time. So I'm here trying to preach balance and trying to preach the value of maybe letting go, the value of less, the value of compost, the value of letting go and coming into alignment with the cycles of nature. There will be time for expansion. There will be time for abundance, but there's also time for reducing. There's also time for letting go. There's time for resting and letting the ground lay fallow so it can recharge its energy and its battery, just like all of us need time to sleep and to recharge. Javier says, sorry, I meant a past repression and a future expansion. Oh, well, that's good clarification there. Corey says, I'm too incompetent for this role, but I'm obsessed with learning, so I have that on my side. Many thanks. Now I can evangelize about the environment and native plants with legitimacy. Hey, there you go. There you go, Corey. I think you had legitimacy before, friend. I think just from using our voices, we can talk about the environment, native plants, but it is nice when we have a title behind it sometimes, right? But yes, native plants, a great way to do your own little part in your own environment is to plant things that provide the eucatastrophe for the plants and animals and insects around us. The good catastrophe, as Tolkien would say, the oasis that may be the one thing that leads to a better outcome, right? That's what the eucatastrophe is. It's like this oasis in a sea of bullshit, you know? Like that's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot this week is the enshittification of the world. Everything is just becoming enshittified. And this is how technology works too. I've been thinking a lot about artificial intelligence and how we're becoming more and more dependent on that. Oftentimes, those new technologies are free, and then eventually the rug's pulled out from everyone after they've become dependent on it. It becomes more and more expensive, and then it becomes less and less useful as it becomes more and more enshittified. And how do we counteract that? Like, I think planting some flowers, some native plants, some trees in your yard or whatever it might be, that is the anti-enshittification. That's a bountification. So how do we start counteracting that concept? It's something worth thinking about. Rocky says, you got it. Right, you got it. Yeah, it was a little bit of a tongue twister at first. I was like, Rocky Mountie. But it's good. I love it. Welcome, friend. KWOW is here, also tuning in while working. Excellent, friend. So I hope that we will enlighten your path ahead today on some level, or light the way, or just spend some time with you while you're doing your thing. We'll chat as I can. Well, I'm just happy you're here, friend. Thank you for stopping in. Javier says, stuck is right on, Spencer. Yeah, tell me your stories in the chat here, friends. If you've got some things, give us some examples of how Mars and Saturn opposing is playing out in your own life. And that's not the only aspect that's coming to perfection this weekend. We have a full moon that's coming up tomorrow. So I'll talk a little bit about that today too. Corey says, I have a pulpit from which I may preach. Too bad I have no planets in Sagittarius. Oh, well, I only have Neptune there, friend, but I think that's good enough. But I don't think we need a Sagittarius planet to preach. We can share our wisdom. We can share our view of things. I know that I'm pretty sure you've got some Libra stuff. So you can tell us the value of balance, the value of equilibrium, the value of things that may be just and fair in the world. And I think that will have equal weight to the Sagittarian placement way of doing things. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that full moon. We did an entire live stream on this last week, but I will, for those, I'll do kind of a, here is my compromise. Like for the people who are having trouble seeing things. I'll put it on the screen for a minute so you can see what we're looking at. So here's the full moon that is going to be perfecting tomorrow with the sun opposite the moon from 16 degrees Leo to 16 degrees of Aquarius. That's happening tomorrow, August 9th at 3:55 a.m. And now what I'll do when I'm talking about it is I will make it a little smaller so that you've seen the chart, and we'll see how it's all going to play out. Okay, so Aquarius 2 full moon, one where we are trying to move from one state to the other, one shore to the other, with the Aquarius 2 decan being associated with the Six of Swords. So we've got this kind of moving on energy, right? And it's opposing the coming home energy of Leo 2. So this is a real kind of challenge between, all right, how do we become our most authentic self? And how do we move on to a new identity that is more in alignment with who we are on the inside? I know that I've been feeling this. I've been feeling a lot of questioning of what is my public face? What is my public identity? One of the things on this channel that I try to do is I try to strive for centeredness. I try to strive for clarity. Try to make this a space where people can express themselves, but one that's based on kindness and reciprocity and things of that nature. There are things, though, that we can't avoid talking about that are painful. And I don't think we avoid painful things here, but I think that sometimes we try to not get into fights with each other. But what I will say at this point in history is there are just some certain things that I don't resonate with, and we may have to start calling them out a little bit more starkly than we have in the past. I always slip in a good jab at the oligarchy and at late stage capitalism, but maybe we need to be more blunt about it in the future. And how do we find different models of that? I just do not resonate with the extractive late stage capitalism model. And we're kind of stuck in that. And especially even in these platforms that we're using to share our ideas. And how do we move forward from that? How do we move forward into an alignment with how nature exchanges in a reciprocal relationship? How do we move forward in maybe a gift economy model? All of those things are something that is a quest for identity. And I give those examples because I'm going through my own identity quest at this full moon and trying to figure out, who do I really want to be? How do I want to show up publicly? It's hard to show up publicly when it's hard when there's so much suffering in the world. And how do we show up in a way that is acknowledging of that suffering, but also trying to show what could be possible in the opposite, what we hope for? It's a difficult question to answer, and one that's been weighing on me lately. Okay, so this finally makes sense why I do feel stuck and stagnant. Also, yes, it's Choco, like chocolate. All right, Choco. Thank you for clarifying that. So thank you, Choco. I love chocolate too, actually. Like, it's one of my favorite things. For those of you who are chocolate fiends or friends, I have a brand that I like. It's called Mast, and it is one that is an 80% dark chocolate that is associated with being mostly lead-free. I was doing research on chocolate that didn't have heavy metals in it, and that's one that I found I really like. But sorry for digressing on that. But Choco, thank you for being here, friends. And yes, stuck and stagnant. That's one of the hallmarks of a Mars Saturn opposition, is feeling like we want to move forward, but we're being slowed down by things. We might not have all the information yet. So it's okay to not have all that clarity yet. Sometimes we have to gather information. And those retrograde planets really show us when that can become a necessary endeavor. Javier says, my North Node is in Aquarius. My goodness, Javier. So Javier, so you probably are dealing with an increasing awareness of a global community, right? With a North Node in Aquarius, or maybe kind of understanding the interconnections between things. So you and I have an opposite North Node. I have a Leo North Node and an Aquarius South Node. And sometimes I feel like my South Node energy is maybe teaching the value of community, teaching the value of interconnectedness. Um, and maybe I'm having to learn how to stand out and utilize a spotlight to give over those types of ideals. I believe that the nodes are a balance point. I think that the nodes in modern evolutionary astrology, they say, well, you want to grow towards your north node and you want to move away from your south node. I don't necessarily believe that as a traditionally influenced astrologer. Traditional astrology would look at the north node of the moon as a place of increase, south node as a place of decrease potentially. But I think having the right balance between the two. So from my perspective, I've been able to utilize being a focal point of light or of attention to help talk about universal themes. And that has helped me balance out that energy. And that could be something that, if you have the opposite, could be true as well. Utilizing your own ability to shine, to get involved with collective movements and things of that nature. Aquarius Galactic Federation says, hold on a second. I have Mercury, Sun, Venus, and Jupiter in Aquarius in the 11th house, and I know all about Aquarius inside and outside. Well, tell us more, Aquarius Galactic Federation. What has been your experience of having all of those placements there? I'd be curious to see. My understanding of Aquarius, preparing for the Saturn webinar that we're doing tomorrow, if you'd like to join us. You know, Saturn is a planet that can cast things into exile. You know, if we look at this card that we were talking about for the full moon in Aquarius 2, it shows someone who's maybe potentially leaving a place of origin and going into exile into a place that they are unfamiliar with. So I think that this is an energy of potential isolation, but also potentially objectivity. So a place where we can rise above and see things from that 30,000-foot vantage point and see how everything interconnects. Saturn has some real significations with being not only the boundary between time and eternity, but a planet that speaks towards eternal law and the blueprint that a planet like Jupiter as demiurge would create from. So we're looking at a planet like Saturn that has had a lot of significations and associations with eternal platonic forms. So let's say we have an interaction between Saturn and Jupiter. We have these intermediary, Saturn projecting. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but the idea in ancient civilization was that these planetary spheres were sort of like these intermediaries between the eternal, the divine, and we're casting these kind of rays and energies down to the lunar sphere that we live in on the planet, right? So Saturn was an intermediary between the divine and the experience of time. So those divine laws maybe were passed through that sphere, and then Jupiter would create all of the abundance of different varieties of forms from that one platonic ideal that Saturn would represent. It's really fascinating. There's all sorts of things that we can go down with that rabbit hole today. But yeah, let me know what your experience of living with those influential planets in your chart have been. Rocky says, my ascendant is Leo, 3 degrees, and North Node is also in Aquarius. Oh, that's interesting, Rocky. I have a Leo ascendant too, my friend, but I have the North Node in Leo on the ascendant. So kind of a different energy there. But Leo 1, this is the first decan of Leo at 3 degrees of Leo, talks about feeling pressure to perform. This is the 5 of Wands card, if you're familiar with the tarot. So here's the 5 of Wands, where we see kind of a mock battle, a competition. I think of like the Olympic Games or something like that. It's a Saturn-ruled decan where we're trying on different personas and different masks to figure out what our true authentic self is. And it can feel like we have pressure to become more visible. And that might be a little bit painful sometimes with the North Node in Aquarius there too, is there may be times where you really do enjoy being visible, and there may be other times where it feels really exposing, right? So that's something to work with that with that placement. I would also say with the North Node in Aquarius and a Leo ascendant, like utilizing your ability to command attention, to utilize your will, but in service of humanity, in service of a collective good. Aquarius Galactic Federation says, I also have Pluto, Mars in the South Node, the part of fortune, and Scorpio in the 8th house. Oh my goodness. Aquarius says, the world is very backwards. It's supposed to be universal wealth, healthcare, education. Also, Pluto, Saturn, and Mercury are my dominant planets in my chart. I can't disagree with you on that, Aquarius. I think that a lot of the ways that we're going about the world are pretty backwards right now and not really in service of each other and of this earth. They're in service of very small handfuls of individuals who have fallen prey to what the indigenous people would call the Wendigo mindset or greed. Aquarius says, living with them planets in Aquarius makes you a big mirror. You mirror everything back to the person they have ignored. As it's my last time on Earth, my younger life was rough. As you get older, it gets easier. You're ahead of the world. You're pretty much waiting for the world to catch up to you. I could see that. There are some themes of being ahead of your time with Aquarius, potentially. I feel that mirror energy, that's sort of the energy of the artist in general, right? The artist is someone who holds up a mirror to people in society and says, hey, here's how I see the reality, and maybe that will help you see your reality in a slightly different way. I don't know much about whether it's the first or last time here on Earth. I think that's hard to say, whether we come back or not, and whether this is the last life, but I hope if it is for you that you're making the best of it, friend. Strings of Apollo is here. How you doing, Strings? I love your little zebra there that we have here. Hello again from Atlanta. Is that what we've got here? Austin, Texas. That's what it is. There we go. I got it. All these abbreviations today. This is making but welcome, friend. Hope everything's going well down there. I know Texas is going through some stuff right now with the potential attempts to gerrymander and redistrict congressional districts. If you all aren't familiar with what's going on down there, people are making attempts to redraw some of the congressional districts to favor Republicans. And yeah, there's a lot of things going on right now in the collective that really troubling. Gerrymandering in general is a really troubling type of vehicle for authoritarian control. String says, at Aquarius Galactic, I says, I hope Saturn and Neptune are treating you well in the first. I also have Aries rising. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that would be an interesting one to have in the first house right now with the transit with Saturn and Neptune going through the first house. I'm sure that that's bringing some extra responsibilities, and it can feel like the weight of the world sometimes when we have those planets moving through our first house. Javier says, I'm getting rocked hard at the moment. Ascendant 8 degrees Capricorn, Neptune 11 degrees, Saturn 12. Both Saturn and Neptune retrograde in the first house, all in Capricorn. Oh my gosh, that seems like it's a challenge, right? So 8 degrees Capricorn ascendant. Capricorn 1 would be your ascendant, where you are maybe trying to understand the advantages and disadvantages of a physical location. I know the last time Javiera was here, she said that she was a Canadian immigrant from Nicaragua. So the ability to discern the new laws of a land is something that's baked into having that ascendant, weighing sort of the advantages and disadvantages. So it's interesting how we play these themes out, right? So all of these planets squaring the ascendant could be fairly challenging, especially when it's coming from maybe the fourth house, feeling some challenges with the domestic situation or the living situation or with the family potentially. So I'm wishing you well in that, Javier. Yeah, String says Austin. That's right, ATX Austin. Aquarius says astrology has been different. Neptune will conjoin my Aries rising and make me outer worldly. Saturn was rough to be as a kid. Saturn has not been in my first 99 to 2000. Okay. Well, I'll have to unpack that statement and make sense of it. Let me know, friends, if you have any questions about your chart. If you have, you've got me here for a few more minutes, hopefully. If you have some questions about what's going on in your life, how to unpack these transits, that's what we're here for. I'd be happy to answer anything that you have on your mind right now. Um, Also, make sure that you sign up for our Dignity and Devotion webinar tomorrow. Saturn, we do Saturn on Saturday, August the 9th, which is tomorrow as I'm recording this. Me and my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, are going to be working through this together. And you can see here, let's see, there it is. Okay. We're going to be spending some time with you, talking Saturn, talking about how to craft a ritual, a magical practice. We're going to be talking about Saturn moving through all its different dignities, its stabilities. We're going to talk about the myths associated with it, just really getting into the essence of Saturn and how we can make friends with it, or how we can endure it, or just understand it. I don't think that we need to necessarily have a positive or a negative relationship with it. I think it's just we have to understand what it might be trying to teach us in our lifetime and how to navigate those waters in our life. All right, what else we got going on here? Okay, hold on. Aquarius says, to me, Saturn is the daddy of time and daddy of karma. I could see that. Yeah, so Saturn, also known as Kronos, was there were two gods. There was a Kronos and they were spelled slightly differently. One with a US, one with an OS. One was a god of time. One was the great reaper of souls. So yeah, we see Kronos on the edge and the boundary of time and eternity. We see the association with the repercussions of our actions with Saturn. We see Saturn as holding that sickle that castrates possibilities and maybe the possibilities of Uranus, his father, into one distinct physical manifestation. So in that story of Uranus and Kronos, Kronos goes and castrates Uranus because Uranus is, wreaking havoc, and his mother, Kronos' mother Rhea, is like, hey, we need to control this out of control father archetype, I guess you could say. And Kronos goes and severs the genitals of Uranus, and the genitals fall into the sea. And from the sea foam, Aphrodite was born. The Uranies were born from the blood. All sorts of interesting little connections there. So yeah, we're going to go through all of that tomorrow in our webinar. So maybe you can join us for that, friend. Javier says, oh, speaking of working through things, how's the garden going for you guys? Javier, the garden is going okay. I would say in the last couple weeks, we have been taking a little bit of a break from some of the more intense physical outdoor experiences and trying to create some space in our life. To be full disclosure, Javier, we planted a number of trees this year. We planted American hazelnuts. We planted elderberries, serviceberries, pawpaw trees. That was the last big project that we did, was planting 5 pawpaw trees in our backyard. And then we kind of started to take a break. It got very, very hot and humid, and the outdoor work was becoming very oppressive. And I've got the cedar raised beds are probably about 90% done. And we had to go get a miter saw. And so I've got a new miter saw, baby's first miter saw, which is a saw that you can make straight cuts and angled cuts with, which is very exciting. But I'm ready to get back to those projects. I think after this weekend, after the webinar series is done, I think it'll give us some space and time to return back to some of those projects, and maybe return when the weather is a little bit cooler. I will say what I've had to do this year, Javier, is at the beginning of this season, we were very ambitious about how many things we wanted to do. We wanted to create a food forest in our backyard and create raised beds and grow a bunch of our own vegetables and food. And we ended up having to spend a lot of time removing a lot of debris, probably like 5 cubic square feet, at least 5 to 10 cubic square feet of concrete from a place where we wanted to plant. was very labor intensive. If you want to see a picture of it, it's crazy. I'll see if I can find it on my phone. But that slowed us down. And I think that we're having to adjust our expectations. And I can say this from the ability to understand what we are experiencing. I don't know if I'll be able to find this in the time that that's not going to make for good TV, me trying to find a picture of a pile of concrete to show you online. But I would say that the experience, oh, here it is. Well, here you can see Tanya helping to dig out some of the, here's my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, digging out some of the boxwoods to make space. We had these boxwoods that really don't do much for the environment. They're not native. And we gave them to a neighbor to put our pawpaw trees in. But see in the background, that's just like a bunch of concrete that we dug out of the backyard. But what I'm learning astrologically, Javiera, from all this, and let me show you the chart here. So here's what's going on with the chart, right? So the big thing is the North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. And all of the plans that we make under these auspices, oftentimes the divine has a better plan. And I've had to learn how to surrender to my limits around this period of time. We had a really grandiose plan. We executed a great amount of it, but then we had to understand that there was limits involved, that we weren't able to necessarily do everything we had planned. So we weren't able to plant the raised beds this year. But I do think that we learned a lot about woodworking. We learned a lot about how to construct those beds. And we're going to finish those this fall, and then they'll be ready to go for next year. So learning how to pace yourself, but also learning the value of doing less, right, is incredible. So that's been another project in the last 2 weeks, is how do we create space? How do we create margin? How do we create restoration in our lives so that we can continue to do the important work that the divine has in store for us? Like, how do we create space in our lives so that we can be available when spirit wants to direct us towards its plan rather than the one that we have? Because I've learned that the hard way, especially as a 12th house sun, is that oftentimes the divine spirit, the Tao, however you want to contextualize it, God, has a different plan for us than we do. And oftentimes it's much better than the one that we had come up with. So that's how it's going. I hope that's a long-winded answer, but oh my gosh, Camilla's here. What's up, Camilla? Says Tanya, making brutal yard work look ethereal. Absolutely. And so do you, my friend. Camilla is one of my beautiful neighbors, and we have a lot of talks about gardening, about this world that we live in. And Camilla has a beautiful, beautiful garden. And Camilla, right back at you, friend. You are doing such amazing work in your garden. We always, when we're walking by, appreciate the time and effort and energy that you've put into it. She has these beautiful peach trees, this beautiful garden, this fenced-in garden that she built all herself, and it's just amazing. So Camilla, it's wonderful to see you here, friend, and hope everything's going well your way. String says, curious your thoughts. Let me see here. Let's hold on a second. Curious your thoughts on the Jupiter transit conjuncting the IC. My IC is at 15 degrees Cancer, Jupiter at 1 degree Cancer. My exactly square my nodes, North Node 15 degrees conjunct Pluto, ruler Venus at 3 Leo in the 5th, currently opposing Pluto. Okay, so let me unpack that. So, strings. My thoughts on your Jupiter transit conjoining the IC, which is the lower midheaven. So that would, I'm assuming that would be in the 4th house. Although we don't always want to make that assumption if we're using whole sign houses. Sometimes the IC is in a different house. But it's at the very bottom of the chart, a place of our roots, a place where we are dealing with maybe sometimes our ancestral inheritance, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be monetary, it could be trauma. So I think that when you have a Jupiter return in the IC, if it is indeed in the 4th house, There could be, especially squaring the nodes. Yeah, so strings is confirming. Yep, fourth house, useful sign, good. I think that when we see the squaring of the nodes, North node at 15 degrees Libra, conjunct Pluto. All right, so that's what we're talking about here. We've got, so let's see, North node would be in the 7th house then, right? So North node in the 7th. So you have Jupiter right now at something called the bending of the nodes. So when a planet is at the bending of the nodes, exactly squaring the nodes, it is an important turning point. In your case, Jupiter is moving towards the North node in the 7th house, a place of increased contractual obligation and agreement and oath with potentially a partner, whether it's a business partner or a romantic partner, etc. And you're moving away from a south node at the 2nd decan of Aries, which talks about, more of an individualistic royal decree type of energy. So my guess, strings, is that there's something going on with your house or your family where you need to work together with a partner or with somebody, whether it's a contractor or somebody, and maybe enter into a contractual agreement to be able to continue to expand or to bring order to your living situation or your family situation. It could even be a turning point where you're considering starting a family or something like that, or where you're maybe committing to a relationship or getting married. That could be a possibility, something of that nature. But the main theme is a turning point that is related to your home, property, and family, where you are moving more towards a harmonious partnership, hopefully, and moving away from an individualistic mindset, which could be challenging as an Aries rising. And especially with Saturn and Neptune there, what Saturn and Neptune sometimes does is gives us a lot of responsibilities as individuals, and then also can make it very seductive to go off on our own. And as a person who might really value individual sovereignty, the need to check in with another and with an other could be very an opportunity for growth, right? Could be painful, but also an opportunity for growth. So let me know how close I got with that, and tell us more about the context if you want in the chat, if you're ready to. Javier says, slow and steady. Much luck to you both. Thank you, Javier. Yeah, it really is slow and steady wins the race. I'm learning that not everything has to be done in one season. We're laying the infrastructure, we're laying the foundation, we're planting seeds, and we learned quite a bit. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot done, but we didn't get everything done, and that's just reality. And that's not a failure. That's just reality sweeping in and saying, you know what? When you plan this the next time, we can all have aspirations, but when our aspirations meet with reality, a very Saturnian type of experience, we have to make adjustments. This is where the difference between pain and suffering comes in my opinion. If we stick with our plan and try to achieve it by any means necessary, okay, because we make the mistake of the hubris of thinking, well, we made the plan, so we're going to, by hell or high water, we're going to just drive through. I think that's where we get the suffering. Sometimes life shows us that our plan wasn't necessarily complete. It doesn't mean that the plan was wrong. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't aspire. It just means that we need to make the adjustments in the moment when we come across some of the boundaries and obstacles. Sometimes we have to learn the lesson of overcoming the obstacle. Sometimes we have to learn the lesson of turning back when there is no way around the obstacle. Sometimes we have to accept and learn to accept our limitations. And that's what Tanya and I have been learning to do this year. When we first started doing the Dignity and Devotion webinar series, we had planned to do a webinar every month. And that was burning us right the hell out. And so we changed. We adjusted course and then changed our schedule and did them once every 2 months. And it's still been challenging, but it's been a lot easier than it was when we did it every month. So how do we make adjustments when we come across our limitations? How do we accept that that's just life sometimes, right? Javier says, the faith, baby steps, all the planning in Virgo is great, but sometimes we need to flow with what comes. Absolutely. Couldn't have had said it better myself, Javier. Javier says, I get stuck on planning. The Virgo moon, same house, south node in the 8th. Yeah, and me too. I do too. I have a Virgo stellium. I have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars all in Virgo, second house. And I love making plans. I love the details. But the plans don't always work out exactly how I've envisioned it. And sometimes the things that I couldn't possibly have seen come up and I have to learn to adjust to. And again, I think the real shift in consciousness around that is that it doesn't mean that we failed. It just means that we are learning the laws of incarnation. This is something about Virgo that I think is really important. Virgo is about learning about process, learning about what it takes to take an idea, an eternal, maybe perfection ideal, and then the process to make it real and enclose it in matter. This is something to consider as we move into Virgo season after the Leo sun is passing into Leo in the next couple weeks. How do we take that divine ideal and enclose it in matter to pass it on as a legacy, a physical legacy? Sometimes it requires removing parts of the process, parts of the plan, because we're working within the limitations of time, space, and resources. This is one thing that I'm really liking about Charles Obert's Saturn book that I've been reading a lot of. This is Saturn Through the Ages, Between Time and Eternity, Charles Obert. It's one of the main texts I've been researching with the Saturn webinar. And he has Saturn in Libra in the 10th house ruling a Capricorn ascendant. And he is loving saying that, hey, we need to learn to respect our limitations and the limitations of these physical incarnations. And I'm really resonating with this. I used to be someone who was very much, we all create our own reality. And if you just put your mind to it, you can do anything. Getting into that whole like quantum physics, the secret type of thing, which by the way was very, very commercialized. And I bristled at that part of it even then. There are some parts of that way of thinking that I think are valuable. There are other parts that have led to a hubris that is destroying our planet. Because when we think that we can do whatever we want as individuals, we're not necessarily thinking of the collective impact that is going to have, not only on the planet, but on each other. And sometimes learning how to deal with limitations, learning how to deal with making adjustments of physical incarnation, super important. Nature knows that. Nature understands limitation. Nature understands abundance. Nature understands not necessarily using more resources than it can give back to the earth. There's this reciprocal relationship. Human beings have real difficulty with that. And I'm not sure where that all came from, but I'm doing the research to help have a language around it. Javier says, planting a seed one a day does not yield results tomorrow. Absolutely. Maybe we talked about that last week, didn't we? When you plant a seed, you have to do all the work necessary to nurture it into its full growth, into its fullest form. If we expect things through instant gratification, a word that I was stuck on without sleep 2 weeks ago, we get stuck on this instant gratification culture, which we are being forced into, all right? We were being like driven into that mindset, all right? Because we value profit over people, profit over expression, profit over balance, profit over everything. Because we're being forced into that, we plant a seed and we want to have it instantaneously done. This is part of the problem that I'm seeing with the advent of artificial intelligence. We don't want to go through the process of learning how to do something. We want to offload that process onto something that will allow us to have the end result instantly. And this is no more prevalent and seen in people offloading artistic things to AI, like the creation of a song. I had a friend, bless his heart. He is a very talented musician. He's a farmer, really has a beautiful idealistic space. And he was using AI to write song lyrics and was like, oh, let's look at this song. It's not half bad. I just put this to music. And I'm kind of like, I would push back on it because I was like, part of the beauty of becoming an artist is the birthing pain, the pain of birthing that, of having that come through you, and the exhilaration of being able to learn a new skill, to learn a new language, to learn a new way of expressing yourself. And when you offload that onto some other like automated system, you have lost all of that confidence building experience. And eventually, this is the problem. If you keep offloading that and you don't experience process, when the technology eventually becomes enshittified and gatekept so that only the people that will pay enough money can use it, your mind and your creative spirit will have atrophied to the point where you're very vulnerable. And to me, that is not a good trade-off, not to mention the environmental impacts that are happening. Now, I will say this, I go through an existential crisis almost daily about AI and about the tools that it could help, speed up my processes. There's things that I would love to do with it that, that I really am trying to resist, but I don't know if I will be able to resist forever. There's some things where it's just being built into some of these things. But how do we engage with this technology in a way that could be responsible, ethical, that doesn't have the environmental impact of using 6 bottles of water every time you do a ChatGPT search or want to make an image of yourself as a superhero? I mean, there are things that may help, that technology could use to help the world, and there's other things that are just completely frivolous that are extremely wasteful. And how do we know the difference between those two things? Can we differentiate between those two things? A lot of questions. I don't have the answers right now, but those are the questions I'm starting to ask, and it's the noise is getting louder with that. So Virgo season, process, embracing the process. Rocky Mountain High says Neptune-Saturn retrograde transit is moving closer to opposing my natal Pluto and part of fortune at 29 degrees Virgo at the end of the 2nd house. Wondering how to prepare and navigate this, or if it's no big deal. All right, let me think about that for a second. Neptune and Saturn, retrograde transit, moving closer to opposing my natal Pluto at 29 degrees of Virgo. So once Saturn moves back into Pisces, it's going to oppose your Pluto once again, right? So I would say the first thing, Rocky, is that you've already gone through this once, potentially, right? Let's see. When Saturn was going through Pisces, you already had a preview of what this could be moving forward. So I want you to look back to when Saturn was opposing your natal Pluto and part of fortune at 29 degrees of Pisces, and the weeks leading up to it. It's not just one event. It is a series of events that is leading up to a peak of energy, right? So as a Leo rising, I've been experiencing some of the similar challenges with Saturn opposing my Jupiter, my Mars, and my Saturn in the 2nd house from the 8th house. So as fellow Leo risings, we have been experiencing a need for a maturation process with the way that we share resources with others, the way that we potentially deal with our view on death, our view on letting go. I would say that the main thing that Saturn in Pisces and the North Node in Pisces has been teaching me is that sometimes there is a plan that I may have that I have to make an adjustment to, and that I have to surrender to something that I couldn't even possibly have anticipated, right? And yes, we can sort of get the vibe of things, but sometimes the universe is going to surprise us in ways that we had no idea was going to happen that way. And I think that as far as how you can prepare for it, I think that the biggest value I've had with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, and then also Saturn, Pisces, is releasing my anxiety about having to have it all figured out. So how do you prepare for this transit coming again? I think you prepare for it by not preparing for it. You prepare for it by surrendering to what is going to happen in your life and releasing anxiety about having to feel that you can only be successful if you have everything ordered and everything planned out in advance. Because that tension between your plan and the unknown is what's going to create the anxiety. Virgo is a sign that has a ton of anxiety just baked into it. Think about it. It's the harvest season. It is the time of year where we're like, well, we've grown all these things for summer. Now we need to preserve it against the oncoming winter. We get nervous because, like, are we going to have enough to eat in the wintertime? What stays and what goes? And then there's this built-in anxiety about it. And sometimes the universe says, maybe we have too much anxiety. Maybe we need to allow ourselves to just be. And I think that this is going to be the greatest lesson that comes from this transit for you and for all of us with this nodal axis is how do we allow ourselves to be? How do we value ourselves, not for what we do, but for who we are, right? I know that sounds very like, I don't know, new agey and banal, but I'd really think in this case it's true. How do we value ourselves and allow ourselves to be without necessarily having to provide any utilitarian value? Aquarius Galactic Federation says, I'm having a Pluto in Aquarius square North Node, South Node, in the North Node, South Node, Uranus, and Gemini. North Node. That's a lot of North Nodes in this comment. Taurus, second house, South Node. So imagine this. I'm trying to imagine it. let me unpack this for a second. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I'm going to piggyback off of Rocky's comment here. It says, by the way, you were spot on earlier, 3 degrees Leo ascendant, North Node Aquarius, saying I would get the most satisfaction doing something in the spotlight as long as it was creating and doing something for the greater good. Absolutely. So that's a great way to utilize your ability to command attention, your ability to utilize your will, but to do it in service of something greater. Trying to find that dream job, right? Absolutely. Okay, so let me go back to Aquarius Galactic Federation. There's a lot going on up there in that noggin. Aquarius it says, I'm having a Pluto in Aquarius, square North Node, South Node, and North and South Node. Uranus is in, and that is a jumble. Maybe you can rewrite that in the chat, possibly a little bit simpler, maybe a little bit clearer. I'm sorry, friend. I'm trying to parse it out, but there's a lot of contradictory things in there that are difficult. Let's see. Oh, so there's a mistype. Node squaring Uranus. Okay, good. Yeah, rewrite that one for me. Maybe just in a little bit clearer language if you can, and I will try to unpack that for you. Strings of Apollo says, thank you, definitely in the ballpark. My wife and I are separated. And so this is hearkening back to an analysis of Jupiter in the 4th house squaring the nodes and moving from the Aries North Node, or Aries South Node in the 1st house to the Libra North Node in the 7th. So sometimes we get a little bit of delay on the comments here. It says, thank you, definitely in the ballpark. My wife and I are separated and figuring out next steps. Whole house, Pluto, what is the Pluto opposition? Whole house is the Pluto opposition my Venus right now. Still unclear. The last 2 times Jupiter hit my IC, I moved. Yeah, the decan that the North Node is in your chart is the 3 of Swords strings. And that sometimes that decan talks about oaths, agreements, but it's like 3 swords piercing a heart. It can be heartbreak. It can be the breaking of oaths and agreements. But maybe there's something where you're learning about how to work through a contractual agreement. Yeah, I wish you well with that, friend. I know sometimes it's tough. It's tough figuring out who we want to be in relationships and how to work things out. And I don't know where you're at with your relationship, if it's salvageable or not, but maybe there's something to work through on that. And if it's not, like, I wish you the most conscious uncoupling and the least amount of struggle with that, friend. KWOW says, I've got a quick question about the IC-MC axis falling into the 3rd and 9th houses. Does it mean private and home life topics will be indicated in both the 3rd and 4th house, and that career and life purpose indicators came from both the 9th and 10th house? It feels like a lot of layers. The Mars opposing Saturn and Neptune is happening in my 4th and 10th, but that's not where my IC-MC axis is. So I'm wondering how to smooth it all together. Okay, so let me process that. So the IC-MC axis falling in the 3rd and 9th house. Okay, got that. Does it mean private and home life topics will be indicated in both the third and fourth house? And that career and life person indicators. Um, yes. So it's interesting. I think that there is a lot of overlap with our roots and foundations when we have the IC in the third house with our community, with not only our siblings potentially, but with our local community, with our local routines, with the short journeys in our life. Um, Sometimes we have a really strong relationship with neighbors or with extended family. When you have the MC in the ninth house, a lot of your praxis, which is a midheaven kind of word, comes through finding meaning in life. Maybe not through the pursuit of authority or of ambition, but through finding meaning within your life, which is a ninth house signification. And it could be a lot of your job comes through long distance travel, through foreign places, things of that nature. So when we have the angles there, um, it really does speak to both our roots and our public faces. That doesn't mean that the fourth house doesn't represent our home. I think there is overlap. I think that the physical home could be related to the fourth house. Also, the fourth house could still represent the father or the parents. The 10th house could still represent a boss or the mother. So I would look at it in that way. KWOW says Mars is opposing Saturn and Neptune is happening in my 4th and 10th, but that's not where my IC-MC axis is, so I'm wondering how to smooth it all together. So a planet that is close to the IC and the MC just gets really concentrated in its energy. I would say that it's probably a little bit less intense than it would normally be having the Mars-Saturn opposition without it being close to the IC-MC axis. Doesn't mean that it's not affecting you. It's probably still affecting your public persona versus your domestic situation. So in this case, I don't know if I know exactly what the rising sign is here, which one is which, but okay, wow, I can't remember. Tell me in the chat what your rising sign is, or where the Mars-Saturn opposition is playing out, and I'll come back to it. Rachel says, part of why I adore Saturn is the divine angst of creation that I experience in my theurgic relationship with the planet. Creativity is hard and raw, but I learn so much from hard work. Absolutely, Rachel. Yeah, the ability to overcome, the ability to struggle, the ability to have healthy boundaries and limits is something that we've lost in our modern culture and our modern civilization. I like to think of Saturn as the type of parent, like let's say we take it from a parental signification. We've always, we had people calling him Daddy Saturn, although there are some significations of Saturn potentially being a feminine planet and being cold and wet versus cold and dry, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think that I like to think of it as Saturn being the responsible parent that doesn't let the toddler run out into the street, right? Like we can empower our children and help them to feel like they are the masters of their own destiny. But also, if our little 3-year-old is running out into the street and has no experience of those rules and of those laws, there is no shame in going and grabbing them before they get hit by a car. Sometimes Saturn is going to grab us before we get run over due to our inexperience, right? And sometimes we have to struggle through things to learn the lesson of being able to work through things over time. Saturn does give good things in life oftentimes, depending on its condition in your chart. But it often comes after a much longer period of time, a much longer period of struggle. Saturn also provides balance. Saturn provides the type of limits and boundaries that help us to have a healthy relationship with things, a healthy relationship with money, a healthy relationship with food, a healthy relationship with growth versus decay. I mean, if we just kept eating all the time, we would become sick. But Saturn says, this is enough. Here's your boundaries. This has been one of my kind of summer projects. I love to eat. I live with a 5-star chef, and I'm not exaggerating. She is an excellent, excellent cook. Tanya is an amazing chef. She has the moon in Taurus in the fifth house, and it's in mutual reception with Jupiter in Cancer. She's an incredible chef. But her food is really rich, and like she makes a lot of it, and I'm the only one that eats it. So I'm just oftentimes I eat too much. And when I was younger, I had a really, really fast metabolism. And as I'm starting to age, another Saturnian type of experience, my metabolism is slowing down and I need less calories. So I've had to learn to say to myself, I've had enough. I'm full. Like that's Saturn, and that's the voice saying that I've had enough, and I'm just, if I'm continuing to eat, it's just for pleasure. It's not actually for just um, for my health. And it's been really humbling to like go through that process. There are times where it's very, very painful, but I'm starting to kind of get the hang of it, right? We make adjustments in our life and then they become habits. Now I don't have to eat to like past my full place. I eat to the point where I'm 80% full, and that little pang of like I could eat more. Eventually that's just the time that it takes that food to get from my mouth to my stomach, right? And I have to appreciate that time. And when I'm like, oh, well, I'm actually full. If I just keep eating, I might be overfull and I might feel sick. It's just a small example of like learning your Saturnian limitations and doing that through discipline. And I know, and totally, everyone's got a different relationship with food. This is just my own particular journey. I know some people have all sorts of different challenges with that, and no judgment on that. I feel like we're all going through different journeys with our bodies and things of that nature. Just for me, that was sort of my attempt to bring some Saturnine limitation into my life, and in something that was starting to make me not feel very good, right? It restored balance to my life. And by changing the way that I uh, put limits on my diet, it actually made me have more energy. It made my sleep better. It made me I spent less time digesting that meal and more time repairing my brain when I'm sleeping. So that's the beauty of Saturn, is by bringing things into balance, it actually can lead us to a better outcome through the beauty of limitation. Javier says, I got the love-hate relationship with Big Daddy Saturn. We all do. We all do, friend. These lessons are not easy. Like imagine, well, you don't have to imagine. I can post some pictures online, but you go to Tanya Andrews' uh, Instagram account and scroll back a little bit and look at some of the food that she's made, like, and then be like, well, I would love to eat all that all the time. And like having to say no to that can be a very painful experience. But I think that it's not necessarily denial to the point where we're suffering. It's learning how to say, I've had enough of this good thing, and now I'm going to let the digestive juices work. I'm going to let the ground lie fallow. It's the same thing with like exponential growth in our society, Javier. If we continue to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow without resting, we use up resources. We burn up the planet. If we continue, I'll just use an example. And I know that I'm struggling with my own hypocrisy with some of these tools, but if we continue to use AI search for just frivolous things, sometimes there might be useful things to use it for, just like it's useful to eat a healthy portion of your meal. But if we keep using it to where we get bloated and where we're drying up lakes that people rely on for fresh water, these are the types of things where some more of something does not necessarily mean better, right? So same thing with this kind of, the myths of progress. And I don't want to be misunderstood here, because this is a much longer conversation. Progress has a lot of advantages to it. Progressions in medicine, progressions in equality, etc. But I think that we're seeing that a lot of these things are cyclical, and we have to deal with them in a cyclical fashion. But assuming that because we are a modern civilization, that we are smarter than our ancestors, or that we have things more figured out, I think that's a huge mistake. I think that there are some parts of antiquity that are horrific and that we would not want to go back to bring into our existence. There are other things where think of all the space that they may have had where they're not overwhelmed with information 24/7. Their ability to connect with not only the divine spirit, but their ability to connect with silence, right? How many of us actually have the gift of silence right now? It's hard to. I know that it's hard to do anything in silence anymore. We have an earbud in where we're listening to a podcast. You're probably doing it right now at work, some of you, and I appreciate you for it. All right, you can make an exception for the Spencer Michaud Astrology podcast. But sometimes we don't really do anything where we can't be with our thoughts. We can't face ourselves. And that was a gift that we had in antiquity, where we had the time to become ourselves over a longer period of time without the forces of instant gratification. Now, this is different periods of time of different experiences of that. But I really feel like understanding limits, understanding where we need to say no to things is a gift from Saturn. It is not necessarily always something to bemoan. Okay, let's see. All right. Let's see. Aquarius says, when Daddy Saturn goes on his rant, he goes. LOL. Now it's like, come on now. Yeah. I hear you. Speaking of that, I feel, even though I'm a Leo ascendant ruled by the sun, I'm a Cancer sun ruled by a moon in Taurus, very lunar and solar, main big three. Right now, by perfected Time Lord, I'm in a Saturn perfection. I'm in a Saturn, like 30-year Capricorn Saturn perfection, level 1 Time Lord. And after that, I'll be in a 29 to 30-year Aquarius Saturn perfection. And I've really felt the transition from Jupiter to Saturn. It was the transition really from teaching professional music and performing musical things as the ruler of my 5th house to doing this work, to doing the work of working with clients, with talking about eternal things like astrology, but also contextualizing it within time, to really feeling the need to speak on the wisdom of less, the wisdom of slow. It's Saturn speaking right through me. I feel it all the time. And I'm getting a better understanding and better appreciation for it. So I think we need Saturn in our lives as much as we may have a difficulty with it. Oh, Strings of Apollo, thank you so much for the super chat, friend. Sorry I didn't see that earlier. Thank you so much. I hope you're still here. Appreciate your generosity. Thank you, friend. All right, let me look through here. Javier says, sitting in the principal's office with both your parents, it won't end there. You're getting it when you get home also. Yeah, Saturn can be really difficult, and it really depends on where it is in your chart. If you have a night chart and Saturn is in a difficult dignity, it can feel really painful. I'm a day chart, so I have I think a fairly positive relationship with Saturn for the most part. Sometimes Mars things I'm uncomfortable with as a day chart person. So we all have different ways of relating to these different planets too. All right, so Aquarius Galactic Federation says Pluto squaring both nodes and both nodes squaring Uranus. Pluto is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Gemini. Hopefully I made it simple. Thank you. Better. Okay, so you've got Pluto squaring both of your natal nodes, right? You've got both of the nodes squaring your natal Uranus. Pluto is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Gemini. Okay, so you have natal Uranus in Gemini? Interesting. Well, so the same concept applies, I think, when we talk about a planet being at the bending of the nodes. Anytime you have a planet at the bending of the nodes, you have to look at which direction the planet is moving towards. If Pluto is moving towards your north node in your chart, that you might be at a crossroads where you are having to go through an intense transformation to be able to come to a place of increase in your life. All right. If it's at the crossroads and you're starting to move more towards the conjunction with the south node, then you're moving towards a place of release, that you're at a peak of increase and moving towards increase. You might be at a peak of decrease moving towards increase when it's squaring the nodes moving towards the north node. And when it's Uranus too, I mean, I think a lot of this can be contextualized by just understanding the nature of Pluto and of Uranus. So Pluto, an underworld force, it brings things to the surface that have been repressed, right? That we've driven underneath the surface and maybe ignored, that have fallen into corruption, that need to be transmuted on some level potentially. Uranus, I would highly recommend going and checking out the Uranus in Gemini Q&A, which was not just a Q&A, it was pretty much a webinar lecture for the first hour, like on the nature of Uranus. But the gist of that being Uranus and its association with Prometheus being a planet that leads us to try to transcend our natural forces, natural rhythms, and to aspire to be more godlike, which can lead to a lot of negative outcomes. It can lead to some liberation, right? It can lead to breaking up crystallized patterns, but it can also lead to overshooting the mark and whatever you're trying to create, falling into chaos, like the Frankenstein monster that Mary Shelley had created, or that Dr. Frankenstein tried to create and bring back to life, but it ended up running amok. So with the Uranus square, you might be trying to break free from some crystallized pattern in your life, but you also might be aspiring towards something that is more idealistic and ignoring some of the natural rules of manifestation. So I would be very careful of that. One example I gave in that talk was of Jurassic Park. And a friend pointed out to me too, it wasn't just the hubris of the scientists trying to bring life back from that had gone extinct. It was the hubris of the capitalists who were trying to profit off of it, who took away the safeguards in that process. And that's always true though. And those two things are completely intertwined in a late stage capitalist society. Is yes, we have the inventors, but we have the people who try to capitalize on that don't really care whether those safeguards are in place. So be careful of trying to pursue something without safeguards, because it might turn out differently than you had imagined. I hope that is helpful for you, friend. Javier says, my IC is at 15 degrees Aries, 4th house. My daughter is an Aries sun. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so like you might be having a real strong connection with her and her roots. She might be really wanting to learn about your roots or your history or maybe even the homeland, right? Was your daughter born in Canada, Javier? That's interesting too, because I can only imagine like maybe you being an immigrant from South America or Central America, and then her being born in a different country and like trying to pass on some of those traditions and roots to her might be part of an important part of your relationship. Wow says, Cancer rising with IC at the very end of the 3rd house, 29 degrees Virgo. So my 4th house Libra Mars. My 4th house Libra is hosting Mars right now. Thanks, homie. Oh, okay. So yeah, you've got Saturn moving through your 10th. Man, sometimes that can lead to some real challenging authority figures in your life, especially with Saturn in Aries. This could be like conflicts with authority figures where they're, being authoritarian, right? And that could, right now with the Mars opposition, there could be something that maybe in your work that is leading to a feeling of injustice in your home life. An example that just came to mind. Let's say your boss is asking you to work extra hours. That could lead to a partner that is upset that you're not spending enough time at home or something like that, and they feel that it's unfair, right? But there might not be something that you can do about it immediately because you need the job, you need the resource. That could be an example of how that could be playing out for you. So I wish you luck with that, KWOW. I hope everything is working out. I know it's tough when we have an angular, opposition there. Javier says, female, cold and wet. Oh, come on, Javier. Get your mind out of the gutter there, friend. Well, I guess Saturn would be associated with gutters and things that are a little bit dirty-minded also. Rocky Mountain High says, as you said, My anxiety is always about not being prepared enough for every possibility. It's difficult to even get started, but in an emergency, natural adrenaline kicks in and that drops. Frustrating. Yeah, I could see that. Um, the type of experiences we're having now with climate change, with growing wealth inequality, with the rise of authoritarianism, with the loss of a lot of our human rights and equality, all of these things, anxiety can get kicked into overdrive, right? Because we're trying to plan for every contingency. The one thing I will say, Rocky, that has helped me. Now, I can't avoid every negative news story, but I can limit the amount of things. I can limit the time that I engage with the news. First of all, I don't have any notifications on my phone that aren't just a text message from one of my family members or really close friends, or a weather update. Nothing from any other app. Nothing. Nothing from a news app. Nothing from Instagram, Facebook. So if you message me on one of those platforms and it takes me a while to get back to you, it's because I just don't have notifications on, and I apologize for that, but I kind of don't apologize for it because I own my own time. So how do we engage when it's appropriate for us, right? Now, that doesn't mean we stick our head in the sand and we ignore the suffering that's going on around us. We have to stay informed. I think it's important to stay informed. But I have a feeling that part of the strategy, the spoken strategy of some of the authoritarian leadership is the shock and awe, is keeping everybody so confused and so scared all the time that they don't know what is up and what is down. So people are literally trying to make you more anxious and fearful by throwing all this shit against the wall. So how do you take back some of your power by limiting your engagement with that? Again, you don't ignore it. We still need to prepare for things, but allow yourself some of those moments of just being. Allow yourself moments of just being in your own headspace without other things that are coming down the pike. How do you add margin back into your life? There's a book I'm reading. It's not on my table right now, but it's called Margin by Richard Swenson. And he talks a lot about adding in space back into our lives so that we reduce some of our anxiety. We add in space through reducing some of our financial commitments. We would create space by reducing some of the things that we're involved in, some of the ambition of our projects, etc. There are some caveats with that book. It's not a perfect book. It was written pre-pandemic, pre-authoritarian takeover of many of the governments of the world. It is also framed in his religious faith, and that might be a turnoff for some people. I'm choosing to not get up in arms about that. I've always been an essence over form type of person, but I can understand how it might be triggering for some people. So if you do get that book, recognize that some of those things are important caveats when you're reading it. But the idea of doing less, of knowing that in the moment you will have what you need that will kick in, like you say, right? That is really part of the religious traditions and spiritual traditions of many centuries, is how do we be in the moment? How do we be present? And oftentimes we have what we need when we come into that presence. Stephen has arrived. Well, congratulations, Stephen. Hope everything's going your way. You're alive for Mars and Libra. Happy to hear that, friend. Javier says, can you explain night and day charts real quick? Absolutely. So I'll just show you a chart here. And again, I know that we had some comments about the smaller chart, and I'm sorry, friends. I'm doing the best I can to have the balance between being able to see the chart at all on the screen and being able to balance it out with to please the algorithmic gods with having a bigger face that isn't so tiny. So here in this very random chart that I have here, it's actually just the clock of the moment. Let's just look at the clock. There's the clock. Right now, it is the daytime where I'm at. The ascendant just clicked over into Sagittarius. The sun is in the 9th house, but if I were to look out of my window, I would see the sun towards the south, moving towards the west. So this is the east. Okay, east is over here, west is over here. The south in the northern hemisphere is at the height of the chart, and north is at the bottom here. So the sun, when it's above the horizon, okay, when it's above this horizon line, is said to be a day chart. So let's take a look. I'm going to see if I can draw here. So here's our horizon line. Okay. Here is the east. Here is the south, as I was talking about. Here's the west. Here's the north. When the sun is above the horizon, it is a day chart. It has nothing to do with where the moon is at, right? When the sun is in the below the horizon position, like the second house or the fourth or the fifth or the sixth, anywhere below this horizon line, it's said to be a night chart. And that is a concept called sect in traditional astrology. And there is a team of planets that had political power based on whether you had a day or a night chart, whether the sect of your chart was lunar or solar. So the day team of planets, okay, day team of planets is the sun, okay, Jupiter, and Saturn. The nighttime planets are the moon, Mars, and Venus. And Mercury can be either one, depending on whether it rises before the sun. In this case, it does, so it's part of the solar sect, or if it rises after the sun, and it would be part of the lunar sect. So the way that you can think about this in your own life is the planets that are of sect. So let's say you had a day chart, right? They have more agency to carry out their significations, okay? And they are able to do things without asking less permission from the other planets in the chart. Let's say, think about it like the political parties. This isn't a great example in America right now because our political system is just so fucked up. But let's say we had like we have now, the Republican Party is in power in Congress. Well, if a Democratic person wants to get their bill across, they're going to have to make compromises with the Republican Party to get it across. Now, I know that's a bad example because nobody's compromising with anybody in America right now. But if, let's say, you have a solar planet and you had the Democratic Party in power and they wanted to pass forth a bill, they wouldn't have to ask as much permission to the other planets. The way that I've seen this play out, and Robert Schmidt really has a lot of things that can talk about this, but the experience of a malefic planet like Mars or Saturn will be slightly less bad if it's in sect, potentially, and might be subjectively worse if it's an out of sect malefic. So like if you're a day chart, Mars might be more challenging. If you're a night chart, Saturn might be more challenging. The benefic planet can do a lot more good if it is of sect. So if you're a day chart, Jupiter might be able to do more good in your chart. Doesn't mean that Venus can't do good. It just means it might be through compromise. Here's an example of this. I have Venus in a day chart in the 11th house, in a good house, okay, in a visible place in the solar hemisphere of the chart. But sometimes Schmidt will say that you will do things that bring good to your community at your own expense. Now, between you and me, I've gotten involved in a lot of group projects in the past where I brought a lot of value to the group, but I didn't necessarily profit from it. Do you see what I'm saying? I do that on this channel, to be honest with you. There's a lot of service that is baked into this channel, and I don't mind it. Like, I would like to be able to still support myself, and things are getting more expensive. So thank you so much, all of you who have been able to donate. Appreciate that. Thank you, KWOW, for your super chat. Appreciate you. It really does help, friends. And again, I'm not in this to get rich. I'm just in it to keep doing it. So that when I ring the bell for donations, it's like, can I still, pay my rent or my mortgage? Can I still put food on my plate by doing this work? That's really what comes down to for me. But sometimes with an out of sect benefic planet, you may be doing good for that area of your life, but it may be a little bit at your own expense. Now, I don't necessarily feel like, for example, that this work I'm doing is at my expense. There's plenty that I get out of doing this work. But I have noticed in certain people's charts, when I've read people's charts, that sometimes they are bringing good to that area of their life, but they may not be benefiting the way that you would if that was insect, if it was the planet that had political power. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna go. I know I'm behind in the chat here. Thanks for all these awesome comments. I really appreciate all of you who are asking questions and sharing your wisdom here today. All of that is very, very helpful for the work that I do here. So keep them coming. Let me see where I'm at here. So let's see. Maybe take this off for a minute. Go back to this view. Aquarius sitting in the principal's office. Okay, I got that one. Sometimes I get lost in where the chat is. Okay, Javier was saying, can you explain day and night charts? I thought we did that. Saying hello to Stephen. Javier says, ew, I've got Jupiter and Gemini. I mean, having a planet in its exile can be challenging because the way that planet functions may be different than what is socially acceptable or what is the norm. It's having resources that are unfamiliar to it. So like Jupiter likes to bring things together, Mercury likes to separate them out into categories. So that when we expand our doubt, right, Jupiter sometimes likes to help us bring certainty to things. Mercury tends to cast things into doubt. So when you have Jupiter in Gemini or Jupiter in Virgo, in my case, sometimes we just expand our doubt. Like I know for me, when I answer one question, it leads to 10 more. So I've just accepted that that's the case, right? All right. Aquarius Galactic says Uranus and Sagittarius, Saturn and Sagittarius in the ninth. I use whole house. So probably have some really interesting ideas about your belief system. And it might be both progressive and conservative at the same time. There's an interesting dichotomy between those two things. Like you may be trying to create structures, but also shatter them. So interesting paradox with those two planets. Stephen says a day chart is if you have the sun anywhere from the 11th and the 8th houses, twilight sun in the 12th, close to the ascendant. Yeah, just really if it's above the ascendant or descendant line, right? Night chart anywhere from the 1st to 7th house. Yes and no. Like you can have a night chart with the sun in the 1st house if you are using whole sign houses. If you're using a quadrant-based house system, then yes. Let's see. I'm going to make sure that I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, but not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Sometimes, yeah, it gets confusing when we try to do it through quadrant-based systems. But in the whole sign example that I gave you, it's anything that's above that ascendant-descendant axis. Yeah, there you go. Stephen clarified. Above the horizon, night chart, sun below the horizon. Javier says, Uranus in Capricorn, 3 degrees retrograde, my 12th house ruled by Sagittarius. Oh my goodness. I've been reading about planets in the 12th house. I would recommend Demetra George's Ancient Astrology and Theory and Practice, Volume 2, to see planets in the houses. I love it. She has some really good thoughts about the outer planets in there, based on Stanislav Grof's research. Okay, so I've got about 15 minutes left, friends. So I'm going to kind of speed through some of these things, and then I do have an animal and an I Ching for you. Says I'm typing on my laptop, so not the best. All the keyboards are together. Oh no. Oh, that makes sense, Aquarius. Well, no worries. We're figuring it out. Let's see. Sometimes if I'm too far back in the comments, I don't have the context for it all, so I apologize if I don't have all the context. How you doing, Kate? I hope everything's going well your way, friend. Okay, Kate says, my surgery was supposed to be today, if you recall. Well, got COVID and had to cancel. Oh my goodness, Kate, sorry to hear that. That sucks. Please heal up quickly and take it easy. But it sounds like a very Mercury retrograde manifestation and a Mars opposite Saturn, wanting to move forward but running into a roadblock. So sorry to hear that, friend, but I hope that you're healing up well. Kate says, I was worried about it going awry, that I hadn't considered it not going at all. Well, here's the thing. Maybe there's a divine plan within that. Maybe this wasn't the greatest day to have a surgery, and maybe the illness that you're experiencing is less bad than what the surgery might have been. So you never know what's playing out in there. And thank you, KWOW, for that contribution. Appreciate you, friend. Javier says, very interesting, Spencer. Thank you so much. You always have wonderful thoughts and insight. Thank you, Javier. Appreciate you. Hope everything's going well your way, friend. Steven says, Saturn is way too challenging for me. Saturn in Taurus opposite Jupiter. I am a night chart. Saturn rising, Sagittarius rising, Sun in the 4th, below the horizon. Yippee for me. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We all have things that are challenging to us in our chart, Steven. And that one definitely sounds like it could be a difficult one, friend. So I hope that you're surviving and thriving. Rocky Mountain says, excited for the Saturn seminar. I have questions. My natal Saturn in the 10th house in Taurus opposite my natal Jupiter, and Sun and Neptune conjoining the 4th and 5th house Sagittarius. Wow. Okay. So we've got, let's see, my natal Saturn in the 10th opposing my natal Jupiter. I mean, this is another classic example of wanting to expand, wanting to bring life to a situation, bring order to a situation, and then sometimes having some frustration with the limits that we have to work within. Maybe wanting to expand on our home experience or have a bigger family or having a bigger house, but our work situation may provide limitations to that. And that can be a source of frustration sometimes. But I hope that you'll join us tomorrow, Rocky Mountain. That'd be really cool. Yeah, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Dignity and Devotion Saturn webinar tomorrow. It's pinned in the chat here if you're still here with me today. Hope you sign up for it. Me and Tanya are going to be doing that at 1 p.m. tomorrow Eastern time. So really hope you'll join us. And if you can't, sign up anyway and you'll get a recording. All right, let's see. Javier says, oh yes, I'm scattered with that Gemini placement. This was Jupiter in Gemini. I have a lot of challenges with Mars and Cancer. Ooh, wow. Those are a couple planets that could definitely be challenging, but I'm sure that you probably have a lot of great ideas, and I bet you're pretty protective of your little one and your family. So those are some positives to bring from that. Aquarius says, yes, it's destroying and building new systems at the same time. It gets interesting, to say the least. Yeah, with Saturn and Uranus in the 9th house, I imagine that crystallization and also lightning bolt shattering energies it takes a lot of delicate balance for sure. Kate says, the malefics are together in my chart and the benefics together in the 6th house. Saturn are the sun 1 degree above the descendant, so day-night strength feels irrelevant. Yeah, sometimes we have complicated charts where some things appear to cancel each other out, but without being able to look at all of the things in your chart, I can't speak on all of that, but I think that pay attention to the guest-host relationships. I think those are really important. Pay attention to where a planet is placed and which topic it is hosting. That concept alone can bring us an enormous amount of clarity. String says, do you use Ceres? It turns retrograde in Aries at the same time as the Venus-Jupiter conjunction next week. Any thoughts on that? I have an idea of what Ceres is and does. Do I use it in my work? Not a ton, but I can understand if it's right on a placement, how that might affect our consciousness. As far as it turning retrograde, my understanding of Ceres is it's associated with teaching. It's associated with Chiron, the centaur, that has a wound that is difficult to heal. I think that as Chiron stations retrograde in Aries 3, my thoughts are decanic based. It might be a potential wound trying to get people on board with your vision, right? That's what Aries 3, a lot of it is about, is trying to win over a hostile crowd. We might be reevaluating some of the fears that we have around maybe pushing back against something that isn't, I don't know, in alignment with our integrity. Sometimes we have to push back on things. Sometimes we have to say things that make people upset. That decan, though, is about kind of smoothing it over, right? That's kind of how do we use our humor to win people over to our side? So we might be examining those themes with Chiron there. All right. I may have to keep moving along here, friends. Stephen is trying to open up a can of worms. Your take on the Lionsgate? I don't really have one. I think that it's really not a thing. I think that the thing that it is based on is the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sirius, which talked about the return of fertility to the Nile River Valley. I think that the way that modern associations talk about the Lionsgate, though, is a conflation of sort of a new age thing that I don't actually think is a thing. So that's my take on it. Sorry, says series at series. Oh, I'm sorry. Series? Okay. So sorry about that, strings. It's been a long one here. So I waxed poetic on Chiron, but not series. So that's a different discussion. Ceres is related to Demeter and food, right? And like food systems, agriculture. I think with Ceres turning retrograde in Aries, I mean, we're already seeing famine in the world and people not getting the aid that they need with Ceres direct, but maybe with Ceres retrograde, maybe there is an ability for people to get what they need. That's my hope. I don't know. I think often in our own charts, Ceres talks about where we seek nurturing and nourishment. So we may be reevaluating how we nourish ourselves, and especially how we nourish ourselves on power, or how certain people nourish themselves on power. Not everybody does. All right. Okay, friends, I got to kind of wrap it up for the day. But this has been awesome. So many amazing questions. Javier says, I agree with you, Spencer, on the Lionsgate. Let's all live with love so hard every day. Manifestation is not a question, but a certainty. Yeah, absolutely. And if Lionsgate is your thing, I'm not like, I don't know. You can celebrate and practice however you want. That's kind of the deal we've made on this channel, as long as it's not hurting anybody. I think that's really the guiding light is do unto others as you'd have them do to you, and try to do as little harm as possible. But as far as my own association with it, it was associated with Sirius, the rising, heliacal rising of that fixed star, which I will say this, we do have Jupiter hanging out on that really powerful fixed star conjoining Venus. So I do think that there is a really important opportunity that's coming through Venus and Jupiter coming together on Sirius. So if you want to call that a quote unquote Lionsgate, you could, but having it come on 8/8 every day or every year is, that's not something that I use in my practice. All right, friends. So let's talk about a hexagram. Here is the hexagram I got for Leo season. So here's our Leo season hexagram. I'm going to put this here. There we go. Let's put it there. I'll make it bigger for you. What is the essence of Leo season in 2025? And I got a really interesting one here. I got the hexagram number 2, which translates to the receptive. And it's moving to hexagram number 16, which is called enthusiasm. So hexagram number 2, receptivity, docility, acceptance, acquiescence, adjustment, nurturing. This is a very yin hexagram. It is the open, receptive earth. So Jack Balkin, in his excellent book, The Laws of Change, says that he compares this to it is beneficial to be constant like a mare, right? And be led. This is allowing ourselves to be led. The mare follows the lead of others and is by nature accommodating and accepting, qualities which are appropriate to the situation. The mare, which also contrasts with the dragon featured in the line statements of Qian. I think I said Qian, maybe? Qian. That's the all yang one. That's hexagram number 1. The dragon flies in the heavens and so symbolizes heaven. The mare roams freely throughout the full extent of the earth and hence symbolizes the earth. So this is this receptive earth quality. Think of like a field that has been plowed and ready to be planted. So how do we become open to where we need to be led? That's been a theme today, is how do we become open to being led? And there's one changing line at 6 at the 4th place. A tied up sack, it says, no blame and no praise. Jack goes on to say, a tied up sack means keeping your own counsel. This line describes a difficult time when it is important to be reserved and reticent. Maintain a low profile. Do not provoke a confrontation. Drawing attention to yourself now will lead to jealousy or antagonism from others, or burdensome obligations and responsibilities. Whether you withdraw into solitude or remain in society, you must learn how to act with reserve and keep your thoughts and feelings to yourself during periods of danger. Interesting. We have a really intense time period right now. And oftentimes in Leo season, we want to express ourselves. We want to be visible. But we have this full moon where we're trying to balance out visibility with the danger of visibility with Pluto there as well. And we're having to really be careful about how we are expressing ourselves so that we don't initiate difficult conflicts with these malefic planets in both their exile and their fall, opposing one another. Hexagram 16 translates to enthusiasm, stirring up, inspiring, broadcasting, preparing for, providing for, planning ahead. Remember we talked about sometimes when we feel stuck, it's not that we can't do something, we just need to prepare for the moment, the Kairos moment, when we can move forward. I think that that's what this hexagram number 16 is helping us to do, is that even when we are feeling stuck, when we have to be receptive to where we want to be led out in the world, there's things that we can do to prepare. We can get enthusiastic about our goals. We can get enthusiastic about our vision. And that in turn can make us really helpful for what's going to happen moving forward. It can really prepare us for that Kairos moment. So then it's keeping our enthusiasm and preparing for that moment really important. All right, I've got an animal for you too. And it's a cat. It's not really a cat. I just wanted to show you my beautiful baby, Radagast. This is Radagast. He's been hanging out like a good boy next to me the whole time. And I thought I would just share him with you today. He has a brother named Gandalf who looks almost exactly the same, except for a gray chin instead of a white one. But our animal for the week, or for the Leo season, I should say, is the fox. There it is. The fox. What a beautiful creature it is. So fox actually is a master of camouflage. It's very hard to be seen, to see them if they don't want you to see them. So it also is a very, an animal that symbolizes protection of the family in a lot of traditions. So this is an important time to, I think, spend time with your family, to participate in like quiet activities, to appreciate one another. Like this is a perfect example of the Venus-Jupiter conjunction that's coming up. The ability to just spend time with the people that we truly love and care about, with that 3 of Cups energy that's coming up on Monday. So really seek out the people in your life that are representing care, nurturing, safety to you, or create that space for your community. That's a great way to work with this energy. Don't wait for someone to invite you over. Make it happen if you have the ability to do so. So this is an animal that helps us to stay out of sight, right? So helps us to stay out of the line of fire and conflict. Oftentimes you learn how to avoid conflict because you don't want to, there's more energy that needs to be expended in conflict. And sometimes we need to reserve that energy. So hopefully this will help us to blend in, to camouflage, spend time with our family, avoid some of the worst conflicts, and that is our animal of the day. Thank you so much, friends, for hanging out with me today. We've got all these beautiful comments coming in. Let's see. Steven says, thanks, Spencer. I love the ancient view, but how to apply it today, I'm not sure. If there is a miraculous flood, I will say okay. That's funny. We did an I Ching. And there's Radagast, exactly. He's a good boy. Yep. We've got the fox say what? That's right. All right, friends. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Do me a huge favor. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thank you for spending time with me here today. Go over and follow me at Spencer Michaud on Instagram and all of the other social medias that are in the description of this video. Go hang out at spencermichaud.com, book a reading. Let's work together moving into the fall. Virgo season is a great time to make plans, so I always get a lot of clients that want to plan ahead for Virgo season. And also, please join me tomorrow for Dignity and Devotion Saturn webinar. Love for you to come help us to celebrate the final installment in our 7 traditional planets. Me and Tanya have worked really hard on this, and it's a great way to support the work that we do and to also just to learn more and to share your ideas. And I would love it if you'd be there. You can find the other Dignity and Devotion planetary webinars for 20% off right now. Use the code SAGMOONMAGIC on the store, spencermichaud.com. And of course, if you want to donate to the work that we're doing today, you can go over to buymeacoffee.com. Thank you so much, everyone who has been here today. Appreciate all of you. Hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Hang in there with the Mars-Saturn opposition. The full moon, a lot of the full moon energy is about transitioning from one state to the next. So try to feel comfortable with the liminal space, right? We don't have everything worked out. We don't have everything resolved, but we're appreciating the journey. Try to fixate less on the end goal and more on the journey. And I think that you will navigate this with grace. Thank you, friends. Appreciate you. Be kind to one another. Be kind to yourself. That's going to help you bring good energy out in the world, okay? So if you're kind to yourself through all of this, it's going to, without beating ourselves up, we can bring the love that we have for ourselves out into the world and for one another. All right, my friends. Have a good one. We'll see you the next time. Peace.